We're going to talk a lot about consumer focuses today. And if you have any questions, please interrupt me because it's so much more rewarding to present if it's a dialogue than just a broadcasting. So I'll start with talking a bit about Consumer Lab and why we have Consumer Lab. How many of you have heard about Consumer Lab at Ericsson before? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, a few of you. So basically, when I present Consumer Lab, the unit where I've been working and putting a lot of focus on understanding consumers, especially from the TV and video arena, is I bring up a service that most of you probably recognize. How many of you have heard of the service SMS? A few of you? Yeah? Yeah? Okay. Do you think it's a good service? You think it's good service? Up with your hand. A few of you? Yeah? A lot of persons made a lot of money on it. But it's a service that's worthless. And why is that? Because it was designed for one purpose and it didn't fulfill that. So this service was sort of invented in the basements without asking any consumers, and it was invented to let business people send business memos between each others, and it didn't work. No one did that. But then regular people started to send chatter or less perhaps important things between each other, and it made a lot of money. Really successful by luck. We can't act like that anymore. So in order to remove that from Ericsson's innovation in TV and video and other products as well, we have Consumer Lab. We do over 100,000 interviews each year in more than 40 different countries. That's representative for around 1.1 billion consumers across the world. So that's sort of the basis. Then we do a lot of in-depth studies. For example, the TV and media study we'll look into just in a few minutes. And to start, before we dive into the messages and sort of the trends, I will go more into, well, I've already talked about Consumer Lab. Of course, what Ericsson also does is we're talking with more than 2,000 TV customers of our own, gathering their feedbacks into our innovation and, of course, our strategy each year. Of course, we also have an end-to-end offering for delivering TV more or less over all different delivery platforms. And I think this is false. It's not 5 Emmys anymore. It's 6 or 7 like that, something like that, that we've got for innovation within HDTV on demand, AFD, and advertising as well. And of course, a lot of IPRs as well following this up, supporting our different services within TV and media as well. So I'd like to start with Ericsson's TV and media vision. So this is our vision on where we think the market will head up until 2020. So I'll just highlight 6 of those sort of forward-looking messages before we dive into the consumer business. The first one, the network society is realized. What we mean with this is we think all devices eventually that benefits from a connection will have a connection. There will be 26 billion connected devices by 2020. 15 of those will actually be video-enabled devices. Then most of you think of TV screens, tablets, smartphones, and things like that. I think of cars. A car uploading a video of an elk to cloud, then the cloud is analyzing, yes, that's an elk, you better brake. That's a video-enabled device as well, so we have to think about video in another way. We think that bundling content and services will be more important than ever before. This is, of course, already very important for the industry, but we're seeing new types of bundles hitting the market where consumers are having problems to consume TV and video how they want, so you start bundling it together with data, or you start bundling it together with big data and things like that, and that's where you find additional revenue streams. We say OTT delivery for all when it comes to TV and video. That doesn't mean that every TV and video will be delivered over the top. No. But we think OTT channel is a very, very interesting channel to widen your audience. Of course, you can deliver TV and video any way you want. But for example, if you look at Sling TV in the US offered by Dish, they expand their target audience by complementing with an OTT subscription as well. 50-50, what we mean with that is, by the year 2020, we think the split between watching linear and live TV, and on the other hand, on-demand and time-shifted TV will be 50-50 in terms of time. And that will also have a huge impact on the distribution of the network. New entrants, new money. We see already players like Google, Apple, Netflix entering the industry, of course bringing a lot of competition, but also a lot of investments and a new type of content as well. And therefore we think that the total TV and media market on an annual basis will grow from 556 billion US dollars a year, which is now, up until 2020 where it's worth $750 billion on an annual basis. But let's go into the Consumer Lab study then. So we will talk about a lot of facts and different trends, so I want you to understand the sample here. This study, it's the 6th of its kind. Within Ericsson, we've done TV and video studies more than 10 years ago. But since 6 years ago, we started asking similar questions so we can track the change of behavior, the change of mentality, and the kind of devices people have and use for TV and video. This is the 6th of its kind. This year, this study was carried out in 20 different markets. So of course, if you're interested in any specific market, we can split down the results to show that market. Today, we will discuss UK results mainly. It was done in 2 different phases, a qualitative phase where me and one of my colleagues goes home to people, sit in their home, drink their tea, coffee, or Coke, depending on where we are, and just talk about how do you consume TV and video on different devices, mobile or fixed or over the top or anyway. And then let's follow up with a quantitative phase where we ask them online through quantitative studies. So just to give you a thought that this isn't a super advanced sample that we're discussing in this study, the only things needed to participate in this study is you should have an internet connection at home. How many has that? Yeah? And you should watch some kind of TV and video. That could be YouTube or linear or on demand at least weekly. How many do that? Okay, so 100% of you would actually be able to be in this study. Of course, you're more advanced than the general population, but it still says a lot. Then we complemented also by measuring 14,500 users with installed apps on their smartphones to see how much data is used for video and things, what kind of apps they're using, how long they're using it as well. So we're mixing all those data points into this study. And my colleague would not forgive me if I do not do advertisements for this. So this is the global report. Please pick up a copy so you can read on your flight home, not in your car, home. So pick one up before you leave. I don't want to see any of those left on the table when we go here. We'll start with the first trend. What this graph is showing is how people are shifting their TV and video viewing habits. If we focus on the green line, this shows the percentage of people that are watching scheduled linear broadcast TV on a daily basis or more often. So this isn't showing the distribution of time. This is showing daily habits. The blue line is showing the percentage of people who are watching recorded linear broadcast TV on a daily basis or more often. So what we see is a slight decrease when it comes to the linear broadcast viewing habits. But it's mainly the non-live TV that is migrating to, of course, the streamed on-demand way of watching things instead. I don't want to spend too much time here because we have a lot of other material to go through. But if we watch this in case broken down on different age groups, starting with those aged 16 to 19 years and ending with those aged 16 to 69, we see a general shift in how you consume TV and video habits.
You don't mind if I interrupt? You said that.
Yep.
I noticed that you'd stop at the age of 69. What happens after that?
No. The thing is, you don't die, you don't have to worry. You can more or less extrapolate this graph, but why we stop at 69 is when we do online sampling, it's very, very hard to get a representative sample of people aged 70 or above. Then you get a very, very small sample that is very high tech and not representative for that age group at all. So that's why we stop at 69. But it's a really good question. Yes.
Do you have any evidence to suggest that the 16 to 19 age group will maintain their consumption habit through their life all the way through to say 69, or will they fall back into whatever the age?
I think it will be something in between. We'll come to that later on, but it's a really, really good question.
Yes.
Will they, as this graph suggests, focus on the streaming channels, not using the other ones at all, more or less?
Okay.
We'll go on later in this presentation, also look, how do they distribute their time depending on devices? Is it,
Sure.
only the big screen, or is it the small screens that are ruling?
So how big is the UK sample? Are you able to
It's 1,000 people in UK.
say?
And it's selected by age, gender, occupation, and things like that. So it's representative for, I think, 83% of the consumers aged 16 to 69 years old in UK. Yes?
Where does catch-up TV for the incumbent big scheduled providers like the BBC, iPlayer,
So the
where does that fit into that?
iPlayer would still be within the streamed one, yes.
Because that's big in the UK. I'm not so sure how that segment is as big in some other countries.
No, and if we looked at this study like 5 years ago, we saw 2 markets that were ahead of everyone else, and that was more or less UK and US, offering really, really good streaming services. And that also impacted piracy, of course. We'll come to that later on if you're interested as well. But here you really see it's more or less the opposite things. The youth are really centered around the streaming channels, while those a bit older are really centered around the more traditional ways of consuming TV and video content. And then the question is, will this just extrapolate when you grow older or not? Just to compare, we can see in 2011, the average amount of hours spent watching on-demand or streamed content was 2 hours a week. That has increased to 5.4 hours a week, and 154% increase when it comes to TV programs and TV series, and 185% increase when it comes to streamed on-demand movies. And now, how many of you are familiar with binge watching, what that is? Probably a lot of you. So this term relates to when consumers watch episode after episode after episode after episode after episode, more or less until they drop dead. And that's a risk, actually, when we interview people. So what we see is 50%, more than 50% of the sample are saying that they're binge watching on a daily basis. Only 5% of the sample say they're never binging. This is a behavior that's becoming so rapidly. And why is this? Binging isn't something new. You had the DVD boxes 10 or 15 years ago. But all of a sudden, you're starting to get hold of subscription-based video-on-demand services. You pay $8 or $9 a month. The more you binge, the more value you get in return. You remove the cost barrier. And therefore, this explodes.
Do you think binging is like halfway between linear and non-linear?
It's an interesting... It can, in some cases, sorry, now we're getting really, really geeky, but in some cases, when I get home to consumers, interview them, ask questions. I've come home to a person in Chicago last year, and she said, I replaced linear TV as the background viewing, because every time I open the door, I press play on Netflix, and it starts playing Desperate Housewives. I just need to make one decision, and there's 154 episodes of Desperate Housewives just playing after each other. Then I go ironing and everything else. That's her background TV. So VOD has replaced even the sort of backdrop for that woman, which is really, really interesting.
Binge and daily don't match. I mean, I've heard more people who binged on one weekend or two, and that's the end of the binging. So what's the daily binging?
I'll come to that. So we also ask, I'll save your question. If I haven't answered it by the end of this slide, please let me know. So what we also ask is, the consumers, how many of those have difficulties finding something to watch on the traditional broadcast TV? And 42% say that they're having problems on a daily basis finding something to watch. And what happens when you don't find something to watch? what happens?
Having babies.
You zap? Sorry? You turn it off? That's also happening. Or you default. And this comes to the daily binging. Because you might go into Netflix or any TV service and think, I want to watch a really, really good movie. But then after half an hour arguing with your wife, should we watch this one or this one or this one, or with the kids, then you say, okay, I'll censor myself. Let's skip this and we'll go for the next episode of House of Cards. Bam, binging. The next episode, it's not a choice. You default back to something you're comfortable with. Also increasing the daily habits of binging. So I would say that that's a major argument why this is exploding as well. You might want to watch a really, really good movie, but you end up, let's just watch the next episode of this because it's good enough, instead of pressing the plus button, which you used to do instead a couple of years ago.
But that's really just DVRing, it's not binging the second time, right? You said when you're binging, you're doing it 24 hours nonstop or whatever.
You don't have to do it. But binging in our definition is watching two episodes or more in a row.
Oh.
So it doesn't have to be until you drop.
Oh.
Yeah.
You say people don't find stuff they like to watch. Is that because of the lack of content or the lack of accessibility to content? So are we talking about here sort of search engines or?
It's both. I didn't bring both those statistics, but we're breaking that down, comparing OTT services with managed services, on-demand services with non-on-demand services, and how good the discovery function is between the different services. And that shows, for example, if we take a sidestep here, if you compare, for example, how people perceive the recommendation systems between different services, the best perceived service, for example, in the US, I think also in the UK, is Netflix. It gets not a good score. It gets the highest score, but it's not good, which tells us a lot. People want recommendations. We know that. People don't perceive the recommendations to be good. Even the best one out there isn't good enough. So that hinders you to explore the content around. Yes?
Is that because it only searches itself? Means that, in other words, Netflix will only tell you about things you'd be interested in on Netflix.
Yes.
It's not going to tell me what's on demand from my operator, right?
But we're getting there. And also the content discovery process is so much more complex than just when you're in front of the screen. It's ongoing 24/7. It's ongoing while you're sitting on the bus. It's ongoing when you're talking to someone. And even though Netflix is good, it doesn't consider those factors. And therefore, it's not good enough. So there's a lot of potential here. Sorry for sort of side stroll there. Also, if we look at the viewing habits, here we come back to your question of how different age groups distribute their TV and video viewing across different devices. We can see the age groups aged 16 to 19 years old, actually more than 50% of their viewing habits is on mobile devices. So the TV screen, fixed TV screen, is not their primary source for TV and video content anymore. And this is something we see time and time and time again when we go to the different households. Then the question is, will it remain that way? Probably not. It will be somewhere in between here. Because by the age you get to 24, you get a work, you can pay more, you get a family, you get more of a social gathering, and the TV screen is more of a social screen. So it will change, but it's very, very hard to predict will it be over here or will it be over here when they mature.
Is that not because you can watch on smartphone more often in wide part of the day, so more hours of the day? Whereas the TV is when you're literally at home, a smartphone, you can be on the bus, you can be on the train, you could be at work.
Yes, theoretically, yes, but the major part of consumption of TV and video on the smartphone and any mobile device is inside the home. We'll come back to why that is, but it's not happening as fast as we expect outside the home, and there's a reason for that. So I'll pause that question, but we'll come back to that. Also what we see, this is along the lines, is what we call place shifting. And this is a behavior when consumers start watching something on one screen, then continuing watching it at another place on another screen, and then finish the, the last 15 minutes of the TV show, perhaps home again on the big screen. And this is becoming so easily by just pause and resuming through the different apps and the different interfaces that we see already almost 40% of those in the UK saying that they're sort of place shifting on a weekly basis or more often. This could be between different rooms or while on the bus to work and things like that.
The question is, if most of the people watching on iPads and all this, why manufacturers go around with higher and higher definition? If people are happy to watch in a little telly, why want to go for 8K and 4K when they're happy to watch on something tiny? Is the content that matters, not the quality anymore?
It depends on the content. So if you're looking, for example, do I need to watch the news in 8K? No. Do I need to watch the latest YouTube clip in 8K? Probably not. Do I want to watch the Formula One or the Championships League in 8K or 3D or whatever? Yes, I do, because we're talking about premium content where I focus my attention. So it also depends on the context and the content you're watching. So you also have to think of that when you offer the different qualities to the different kind of content. But really, really good question. Then also we can see that what you're watching depends on what kind of device you're using. So if we're looking on the content viewing habits on the smartphone, we see it's dominated by user-generated content from services like YouTube or similar services. We'll come into the reasons later on. While if you look on the big screen TV, again, this could be skewed by the habits of the age, by the different devices as well. You more come into recorded or scheduled TV and video programs and movies and series and things like that. So that also impacts a lot. Lastly, before we go into the reason why people aren't watching so much content on mobile devices when outside of the home, we'll look at this as well. If we look at YouTube, we can see there isn't large, this is the number of minutes spent watching YouTube content on a smartphone, and this is then the number of minutes watching on the tablet. So for short-term content, the preferences doesn't matter that much if it's a smartphone or a tablet. But precisely as you say, when it comes to longer term content, more quality content, you prefer the bigger screen, the tablet, or even the big TV screen, because that's how you want to experience the most quality content. This is the reasons why we're seeing, yes, video consumption outside the home on mobile devices is happening, but it's not happening as fast as we would expect. And that's why, let's see, the service doesn't work when I don't have access to internet. The data cost for watching TV and video content when away from home is too high. So this is when we ask consumers, what is limiting you from consuming more TV and video content? And when outside the home, the business models of data do not correlate or support that of the consumer habits. And there we come into a lot of coping behavior like piracy, like downloading, and things like that. And don't talk about the content windows and don't talk about your regions, because then that also encourages a lot of piracy. And I'm a bit sad that I didn't bring the next reason here, which is 15% say, I don't watch more TV and video content because my spouse don't allow me to. So that's also a reason, but we can't really do anything about that. But it's good to be aware of. So next slide is about the TV and video spending and their budget. When we talk about TV and video budget, consumers, most of the consumers, this then shows average spending of £53 a month in UK on TV and video, but then we've included internet. And most consumers don't relate that purely to TV and video spending. So I would cut this out if we're talking about the mindset of budget. Same thing goes for cinema, which is really, really interesting because we think, yeah, that costs a lot, but it doesn't correlate to the TV and video budget. A lot of the consumers we talk to say, no, that's my social budget, or that's my dating budget, so it's not my TV budget. But if we compare to other years, we can see the major changes is small increase when it comes to managed TV, how much you spend in the managed TV package, a small increase when it comes to SVOD and TVOD spending, so it's shifting towards those kind of services slightly, but not that fast. If you personalize too much, it becomes too cumbersome to actually pick your services and things like that. While on the other hand, a lot of consumers are really frustrated of not feeling that they're paying for what they're using. And that favors personalization. But then you can think of things like big data and personal information generated by the system. And that could actually personalize the services for them instead of having them to pick and mix their own. So what this graph is showing over here, it's showing what we call cord cutting and cord shavers. Cord cutting is someone who decided, I don't no longer need managed TV, I'll stop paying for it. Shaver is someone who reduced the amount of money they spend on managed TV. So we see the vast majority, they're not changing their TV and video spending at all. We can see 18% are what we call cord nevers. That's a high number, but it's a high number because we have those aged 16 to 19 years old in our study as well. So cord never is someone who have never had managed TV. And when we interview a lot of people aged around 24, we can see that some of those younger cord nevers, they are raised with not having managed TV. And why is that? Because when you go to college, you have a limited budget. What do you spend your limited budget on? Is it on managed TV? No. You spend it on internet and the computer. Then you learn to live without managed TV. And then when you end college and start owning your own money, you think, do I really need to spend this? And they become cord nevers. So of course, we need to think of new business models to attract those persons, or perhaps some more attractive choices like Sling TV or things like that. And here, over here, we see the main reasons for eliminating or cutting the cord then. Then we can see the major two ones are cost related. Wanted to need or needed to save money, or I felt I didn't watch enough to motivate the cost in the UK. So also looking at, for example, Netflix, HBO, Hulu users, those who have SVOD services, OTT SVOD services, those are less likely to cut or shave the cord. So it's those people who feel TV are less important that are cord cutting and cord shavers, not in general those who are OTT users. So it's the importance of TV that relates to cord cutting and cord shaving. What we've also looked at, I think all of you are familiar with Net Promoter Score, NPS. So we asked consumers, how do you perceive your TV and video service on a scale from 0 to 10? Would you recommend it to a family or a friend or, and then we can calculate the NPS score. This is for US. Then we can see a huge difference between linear TV services that gets an NPS score of 10 and on-demand TV and video services that get a good NPS score of 36. So it's a huge difference, and we'll come into why that is different. In the UK, on the other hand, you don't see the same difference here. And you don't have the same frustrating built up in the cost differences between the different offerings as well. So then we ask consumers also to rate both those different services. And of course, we can break down this data into every specific service on the UK market, given that it's have enough users to be represented in our samples. So we could, or for example, we can break it down for Comcast in the US and things like that. So let us know if you're interested in that. What we see in the UK, which is interesting, in more or less all other markets, we see that the on-demand TV and video services outperform the traditional linear TV services in all factors, except quality. In UK, actually, the managed or the traditional linear TV services perceived as offering better video quality than the on-demand. In all other markets, that's more or less perceived as offering the same quality. But in UK, there's still a difference. In all other aspects, when it comes to available content, we see that on-demand services outperform those traditional linear ones. Same thing when it comes to mobility, being able to consume your content across all different places. On-demand services are perceived as being much, much better. Price, same thing there, and recommendations. Not that big difference, but still a bit of difference there.
If you look at the green and the blue, would you say the fact that there's no mobile TV in the UK attributes to why the blue is in that fashion?
I'm surprised it's even at 19%.
Yes, of course, yeah. Yes. But then also, why it's at 19%, it's because this becomes very, very hard to distinguish for a lot of consumers, the technical terms. If I have the managed TV, then I can get it through an app. Is that still linear TV? It's starting to get confusing. So I would say a lot of the consumers over here, they would sort of relate the on-demand service to the linear, yeah. So this was an experiment that we subjected some of the interviews we did to. We removed their managed TV for 2 weeks and see what happened. And precisely as those families, and especially the fathers and mothers said, you know, we really missed this. It was the social gathering spot in the household. It was catastrophe. We didn't see the kids at all. They were only in the rooms and things like that. On the other hand, talking to the kids, they were like, great, I'm not forced to watch what my mother and father is watching. So of course, there's a lot of value in the linear schedule and managed TV as well. You know, the live content is more important than ever. Sports, people are more willing to pay than ever for watching sports. It's still a very, very central household campfire spot to gather the family around. It's good for relaxation. You want to avoid spoilers. If you miss the linear viewing, you have to avoid Twitter, Facebook, and everything. We are a lot of this from consumers. So of course, there's those two different ingredients, and you need both of them. Also, each year we ask all the respondents what are the most important factors when it comes to how you want to watch TV and video content. Those are the top ones, just to highlight a few. HD quality, 50% perceive it as very, very important to the way they want to consume TV and video content. Theatrical releases directly on the TV. People are getting really bored with this content windowing and restrictions concerning that, and are therefore turning to piracy in many cases. And the one that's increased the most, my TV and video content anywhere, especially when it comes to younger generation. They don't have any acceptance of not being able to access the content they paid for at any time, at any place. That's something they take for granted nowadays. Then, of course, already 30% saying 4K quality is very, very important. Well, that's just a sort of effect of people expecting the same jump in quality and experience as they experience going from standard quality to full HD quality. So it's not what they experienced, it was they're perceived to expect, sort of.
Did you find any evidence to suggest that viewers are willing to pay for HD quality?
Yes. Hopefully I saved that slide. No, I didn't save that slide. We have a similar slide. I think actually it's in the report here, where we ask the same thing, but what are you willing to pay extra for? And HD quality is still on top. So it's still perceived, but it's decreasing because it's becoming more and more of a convenience factor that you expect to get. But it's still very, very high.
Did you look at the effect of particularly young people with piracy, getting their video content from some non-official site, and how that affects the specs?
Yes, so a really interesting thing when it comes to piracy is, when I explain it, I like to compare two different markets. US, for example, also in the data we have which kind of on-demand feature or services are using. And if you look at the US, we can see all the top 10 ones are legal. Netflix, Hulu, iTunes, Amazon, you name it, abc.com, etc. Very, very low is the illegal services like downloading or streaming illegally. In Spain, on the other hand, you see, especially 2014, this is decreasing. You see that among the top 4 ones, 2 are illegal ones, illegal streaming or illegal downloading. And is that due to culture? Or why are people in Spain more illegal?
Got no money.
You're betting your money on culture. Yeah?
Got no money.
Content availability.
Precisely. So a lot of people say, no, it's because of, people in US, they have the feds. They kick in doors, shoot people. Of course, then you stay legal. No, not when we interview consumers. They're not concerned about that. It's about content availability, especially when all your friends are also on Facebook. So if I'm in Spain, well, let's say I'm in US and you're in Spain, and I want to discuss the latest episode of House of Cards is a stupid example. Let's say Walking Dead or something like that. Then I just send you in a chat mail and say, okay, do you want to talk about the last thing that happened in Walking Dead? You will reply to me, wait for 1 month. Then we can discuss this issue. People don't tolerate that, of course not, and then they turn to piracy. So it's about availability. And we see it by the time more on-demand services are taking up in Spain, piracy is dropping radically. So yes, yeah?
Sorry, that last slide, I'm just curious, with BT now offering a 4K UHD streaming sport option, I don't know how long ago you did your survey, but I was just curious to see if that's had any impact on people's perception, desire and appetite for that.
I haven't looked into how that particular service has impacted the results in the UK. But what we see is a major reason for a lot of people to, especially if you look at US, for example, the packages are really, really expensive, $100 or $150 a month. And then you get access to the premium sports. And that's the only way to get access to the premium sports. Then, of course, it's a huge risk when we talk to consumers that if I can get access to the sports any other way, I will drop it overnight, of course. I'm not sure if, when we visited households in UK, you saw also on the MPS difference wasn't as high in the UK. The managed TV packages are perceived as more, fairly priced in the US than they are in the UK than they are in the US. I don't think we'll see the same effect on the UK market as we would see on the US market. That's as close I get to answering that question, I think. Just to sum it up, so we're seeing shifting viewing habits. What people started to think of when we talked to them with TV and video was always starting with linear channels, then adding other components on top of that. That was the old school way of going about. What people are thinking now is just all the different services are just part of something that should be bundled together without any problems at all, seamlessly. And of course, there's a huge opportunity in this. When we ask consumers, how interested are you in a service that would combine all the different on-demand services that are you using, SVOD or TVOD, and the linear ones as well, we see huge interest on a scale from 1 to 7. See the focus over here. They want it super simple and aggregated, and there's a huge opportunity in there. So I actually think I'll end my presentation here. And the Consumer Lab material that I've shown, it's available in that folder, and also you can download it from the Consumer Lab homepage if you want to view the data anymore. And if you have any questions, please let me know. And also, we provide a workshop if you want to dive into any of the trends or go into the media vision to understand how they will impact you. Let us know and we can set it up. Thank you very much.